in Africa. You see victims taking up his principles. And in that struggle, court after court has said that the obligation of a country to investigate the worst atrocities cannot be extinguished by an amnesty law or by the passage of time. And in Spain, of course, as you mentioned, Spain is a country that is littered with mass graves from the Franco era. And over the last several years, a movement has grown up of the children and the grandchildren of victims asking what happened to those people. And they filed complaints in Spanish courts. And so, and Garzón took up those complaints. And the irony here, of course, is that he is being prosecuted in Spain for trying to apply the very principles that he so successfully promoted internationally. And so his investigation was not only overturned on appeal, which would be bad enough, but as you mentioned, these right-wing groups then actually charged that he'd committed a crime by carrying out the investigation. And unfortunately, the judiciary in Spain remains very conservative. Garzón has made enemies on both the right and the left. Most recently, he helped to uncover a massive corruption scandal in the now ruling Popular Party. But he also, when Felipe González was president of the government, the socialist, he helped to uncover a death squad activity against Basque terrorists. So he has a lot of enemies across the board. And this case, which is only one of 3 cases actually working their way through against Garzón, it seems to be a concerted effort by his enemies to cut him down to size.
Reed Brody, Judge Baltasar Garzón spoke to Democracy Now! Last year when he was in New York to receive the first Abraham Lincoln Brigade Archives Puffin Award for human rights activism. He talked precisely about the paradox of Spain pursuing a case against him.
Esa es la contradicción y la paradoja de una situación en la que España ha sido pionera en la jurisdicción universal.
This is the paradox and the irony of a situation in which Spain has been pioneer in the application of universal jurisdiction.
Y cuando se trata de analizar y de investigar los hechos propios, se niega a hacerlo y se procesa al juez.
Yet when Spain, when it actually comes to investigating the case and the facts of the case in Spain, the country denies access to the facts and puts the judge himself on trial.
Yo creo que es una obligación de todo juez investigar esos hechos y dar protección a las víctimas, verdad, justicia y reparación.
It is the obligation of a judge to investigate the cases and to search for truth, justice, and reparation for the victims of these crimes.
Judge Garzón also explained why the crimes of the Franco regime cannot be absolved by an amnesty law.
Esa es la contradicción y la paradoja, que no se quieran investigar los crímenes del franquismo y sí a quien los investiga.
The paradox again is that the government refuses to investigate the crimes against humanity and at the same time is prosecuting the judge who wants to uncover them.
Entre 150.000 y 200.000 personas desaparecieron.
There were between 150,000 and 200,000 people disappeared under the Franco
como
regime
población civil.
as part of the civil population.
Esas desapariciones todavía siguen sin determinar dónde está el paradero de las víctimas.
It's still not known where the victims lie buried.
Es un delito permanente y por tanto no puede estar amparado por ninguna amnistía.
It's a permanent crime and therefore it cannot be absolved by an amnesty law.
That was Judge Garzón speaking to Democracy Now! Last year here in New York. To see the full interview, please go to our website at democracynow.org. Reed Brody, can you talk a little bit about the idea of universal jurisdiction and amnesty law?
Well, universal jurisdiction is the principle that some crimes are so heinous that every state has the right and often the duty to prosecute the perpetrators. And that was the principle by which a Spanish judge could investigate crimes committed in Chile, or for that matter, crimes committed against Guantanamo. As you mentioned, the only case, or one of the only cases that is open for the alleged crimes of the Bush administration in its counterterrorism policies is the investigation that Judge Garzón opened in Spain, and has been continued by another judge. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I was called and I will be going to testify before a Spanish judge based on Human Rights Watch's reporting on the Bush administration's counterterrorism policies. Now, the question of amnesty, many countries, and in fact it goes together with universal jurisdiction, because universal jurisdiction is international law's answer to the spectacle of tyrants and torturers who cover themselves at home with amnesties. And so the Pinochet case began. Of course, Pinochet was in Chile. He was protected by his own amnesty. He went to England, and Judge Garzón indicted him. But fortunately, by the time General Pinochet went back to Spain, went back to Chile, judges in Chile found a way around that amnesty using the same argument that Baltasar Garzón is using in Spain, which is that people who are disappeared and who remain disappeared until today, those are continuing crimes. So an amnesty that was passed 15, 20, 30 years ago does not bar crimes that continue today. And as long as those relatives are in mass graves, nobody knows what happened to them, they can still be investigated despite an amnesty that was passed a long time ago.
Reed Brody, before we turn to Haiti in the last few minutes of the broadcast, because we want to talk about baby Dr. Valier, wanted to ask you quickly about his attempt to bring Bush administration officials to justice around torture.
Well, there were 4 Spanish residents and nationals in Guantanamo, and who are actually he was actually prosecuting them for crimes connected to terrorism. But when he learned about what was happening to them, he asserted jurisdiction, and then the Center for Constitutional Rights and the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights filed cases in Spain. And so there is an investigation now underway in the Spanish courts looking at the responsibility of U.S. officials related not just to Guantanamo, but to the whole policy of mistreatment of detainees. And that investigation, we know now from WikiLeaks that both the Bush administration but also the Obama administration were putting pressure on Spain, first of all, to get Judge Garzón off that investigation, but also on the state prosecutor to come out against the investigation as he did.